My signal's faint, but still it flies. It has been sent through the sky. It's riding waves.
Why should anybody care? That's the important question, okay? And I think that's how hams approach it. Why should I care about GMRS? I've got ham radio license. Okay, well, let's ask another question. How many of you are in Aries or weather spot or have helped somebody in an emergency with ham radio? Just show of hands, you know. So if those come as things that you need to do, you should think in terms of what you can do for your neighbors or for yourself. Now, I live up in the mountains. Mountains are different. Come on. Hello? It is on. It was on. It is on. It's on. Yeah, I just did it about 10 minutes ago. Yeah. Okay. Now, I move up in the mountains. Downsides, nobody delivers pizza. Nobody, you know, there's some things like that. And anybody who's been in telecom or most hams have heard of the last mile problem. We are the last mile. There's probably 120, 160 households up in our area. So if there's an area power outage, they don't care. We're the last people that get dealt with. I had CenturyLink phone line go out for me twice in 2024. Both times they estimated a 3-month time to fix it. So, well, one of the times I got them to fix it because I saw the guy working at the slick box, just pulled my car over, introduced myself, and started talking about what happened. So, there's one way in or out officially. Now, you corner one of the firefighters and they'll say, I can't say anything on the record, but off the record, I'd put bolt cutters in your car. So, because there are gated dirt roads that go across private land. Now, I'd much prefer to follow red and blue lights through those gated lands, but you know, if push comes to shove, nobody has cell service up there. When there's fires in the area, and there are, they put up temporary cell service for the firefighters. So if you need help, it's local, it's hyper local. My ham friend in North Carolina doesn't give a damn. Greeley, he can't help me. He may have his own problems. We all know how the weather works around here. For me, I had a Honda Accord. There's my Honda Accord. If you look very carefully, you can see the very top of an SG 7900 sticking out of the snow. Normally, I have a neighbor who loves to do my driveway. He collects power equipment. So he's got a front end loader, you know, a road grader, all that sort of stuff. He happened to be gone that week. So he wasn't available. Next closest neighbor is 1,000 feet of post holing through 4 feet of snow. So if I didn't have phone lines, I'm stuck. Now, fortunately for this particular storm, I had phone I had power, and I had internet. So I got on Nextdoor and said, could anybody help me out? And ended up getting in touch with a lady at Carter Lake who said her husband owns a construction company. He's out plowing driveways with his front end loader. My neighbor, he doesn't care about ham radio. He's got his own hobbies. GMRS radios looks astonishingly familiar. Okay. The difference is the Japanese ham brands have largely abandoned them. So it's a smaller market, or not their niche. So they don't do it. They're affordable. This used to be called Class C Citizens Radio Service back in the 70s. Back then, Class C was for commercial use or individuals who had a lot of coin. Class D was for the masses. Class C, or GMRS, is fairly civilized. I got less bad behavior on my repeater than I hear on the 275. So, this is radio for people who want to communicate and don't care about anything else. For us hams, Part 97.1a says the amateur service to the public is a voluntary non-commercial service, particularly in respect to providing emergency communications. That's what this is about. Again, your neighbor doesn't care. He may need your help though. And if the power's out, the phones are out, the ISP is out, and the VoIP phone lines are out, so your internet is out. General Motor Radio Service, Part 95, is for the non-technical. It's also a gateway drug. Why did I get into it? Because in 2020, we're all sitting at home. Excuse me. In 2020, we're sitting at home, and I thought, you know, it'd be great if this neighborhood were on GMRS, because they don't care about ham radio licenses. And so my first thought was, I don't remember my FRN and I don't know where I wrote it down. So I called the FCC. Someone picked up. I said, what's my FRN? She said, what's your address? I gave her that. She gave me my FRN. I said, I want to get a GMRS license. What do I do? She said, pay the fee. I said, what's your credit card number? Here's your credit card number. Okay, here's your license. Over the phone. She said, you'll get mailed a notification in a day or two. I wanted to organize my neighbors, but I had no idea on how to do that. I'm not a particularly socially flexible person, so I think Ham's can appreciate that. So I had no clue as to how I was going to do this. So my neighbor, Dennis Brown, WRVQ 879, said to me, what do you think of a GMRS net after looking at all the antennas on my roof? I said, I thought that was a great idea. So our little neighborhood has its own water system. Because of that, we have to have meetings about it. It's fairly expensive to run a water system for 80 households. Excuse me. Jim can attest to that. Jim is the president of our water association. So Dennis and I brought our radios to the Water Association annual meeting, started talking about it, and said we'd like to have a meeting on the subject. So one of Pete's neighbors had a rec room over a barn and said, let me give you the space for this. We had 24 people show up to that first meeting. That was a surprise to me. So at first we were fumbling along with GMRS on simplex frequencies, simplex channels. GMRS is channelized. And we reached most people, not everybody. So we decided to, maybe we should get a repeater after all. Now GMRS only has 22 channels. So you've got to be very, very careful when putting up a repeater. There's only 7 of those channels available for repeater use. So the next question is always, where does the money come from? We had no organization, and at the time I had a little cash windfall. So rather than dink around with it for week after week after week, and not knowing this gentleman here, I went to Collins Communication. Don was only too happy to sell me one of his Kenwoods that had been sitting on a shelf since it was pulled from service at a premium. He also said, we'll give you 90% off the normal cost of a repeater site. So he happened to be the guy who managed the ideal repeater site for us, Green Mountain. So what are your rules when you get on GMRS? You have to ID every 15 minutes. Your license is for your whole family. There is no corporate license anymore except for grandfathered ones. There are no organizational licenses except for grandfathered ones. GMRS channels are FRS channels. Same number, same frequency. So if you get on GMRS channel 5, FRS channel 5, you can talk to each other. Intercommunication with FRS is allowed, but not on repeaters. FRS are not allowed to use repeaters. Last year, there was a GMRS repeater system in New York State. It was interlinked repeaters across the state. The FCC came down on them. They made a ruling. GMRS repeaters shall not be interlinked. These are for hyper-local communications. Now, one of the weird things about GMRS is on each channel, you have different rules for power, deviation limits, and whether or not you can use it for a repeater. So GMRS channels 1 through 6 are 5 watts. 7 through 14 are 2 watts and narrow band deviation. 15 through 22 are 20 kilohertz, not 25 like a ham band, 20 kilohertz deviation, but they can also be used for repeaters. Repeaters are always positive offset. So no repeaters can be linked, which was okay by us. We're hyper-local. We care about a 4-mile radius in our neighborhood. So for me, the Carter Lake resident with the John Deere, who at the time I got in contact with his wife, was down in the city of Loveland plowing driveways in the outskirts. She was, no, we can't help you out. You know, he's going to come back at 10 o'clock. And I said, I'll wait till 10 o'clock. And he said, are you sure? Yes. 10 o'clock, this John Deere trundles up the road at about 5 miles an hour. I'm frantically waving at him with a flashlight. And his knobby tires could not get up my driveway. So he got as far as he could. In about 40 minutes, he cleared all but about a 6-foot stretch. And I shoveled out the car enough to turn it around and compress the snow in front of it, of course. The next day, I caught my neighbor Jim on the other side. Jim had a 4-wheel drive and a front-mounted winch. The Honda had a nice tow point. He connected to the tow point, pulled me through that 4-foot stretch of compacted snow, and I was down the driveway. The main road, of course, was completely plowed. Larimer County took care of that. There's hydropower plants up there, so they care about the main road. So that time I had power, internet, phone. Not every time is like that. It would have been a whole lot easier to get there if I could have just radioed my neighborhood and said, can anybody spare some time with a 4-wheel drive? I had to wait a day. That was the week of Thanksgiving. I ended up making it to Thanksgiving dinner, but, you know, would have been nicer with a radio net. So here we are on channel 5. We can't reach everybody. I can hear Pete and Angie when they're standing on their porch. That's ideal in the summer, not so much in the winter. So this particular location, Green Mountain, was also managed by Don. So we got a repeater. Our costs, I paid $950 for the Kenwood repeater. With warranty, with setting up the cans, with everything. Like, I paid $550 for a 100 amp hour battery. Why? Because they shipped it overnight FedEx. 100-pound battery, and they shipped it overnight. The battery, I think, was about $250. Don's prices were high, but I bought cabling, them to install connectors. They put on the connectors and the polyphaser from him. Just to anybody that does business with them, polyphasered ham radio outlet is $30 cheaper, but he saw that I got the polyphaser from him. He knew, you know, it wasn't from a dubious source. Hosting is $600 a year. About 65% of my cost has been recouped by donations. Anything from anonymous people sticking $100 bills in jars to Venmo payments, and that's fine. In July, it will come up again. I'm WRFX 553. I'm the custodian of the repeater. The repeater's call sign is also WRFX 553. It's not a separate call sign. Weekly neighborhood nets encourage use. Had a net during one of the wildfire meetings, and the lady who was hosting the meeting, looked at me with this exaggerated, stricken face and said, "What do I say?" And I said, "Just follow what everybody else is saying. That's all you got to do." She's now one of the most enthusiastic supporters of the repeater. We get 12 to 15 check-ins weekly. We've got more people than that. I think we're now up to 28 users. These 5 at this time are hams. There are more hams now. Dennis, my neighbor with the GMRS license, is now a technician. He's also on the Zoom call. This repeater site has a commanding view, to put it mildly. There's a 6-element commercial Yagi pointing back to our back mountain areas along where Pete and Angie live. It's not pointing at me, but I hit it just fine. It's pointing away from the city of Loveland. Joe hits it just fine, full quieting. Bart in Evans hits it fine, full quieting. I hit it full quieting from inside this room with one of those walkie-talkies. So we've got these nets. 11 days after the repeater was installed, the Alexander Mountain fire broke out. Our neighborhood was evacuated. The fire was on the other side of 34 from us, but according to the fire growth estimates, if a single ember crossed 34, there was a 100% chance it would ignite, and they wouldn't have stopped it. One of the problems with our side of 34 is most of the land is privately owned, and most of the owners of those lands don't want to let anybody clean up the underbrush. We, on the other hand, are trying to keep a good relationship with our fire departments and have them come in and inspect, certify, which, by the way, does wonders for our insurance. All the like. Let them tear out trees that are problematic. I've got several that are problematic that I want to leave to some professionals. Give you an idea on how I addressed the house was exaggerated neglect. There were some evergreens held up by green stakes, holding them in place to keep them up against the wind. Those trees have grown around the green stakes, leaving a nice surprise for anybody with a chainsaw. So I'd rather somebody who's aware of what is in that tree do the job and know how to handle it. So on July 18th, that was a Thursday, we installed the repeater. Fridays all summer long were reserved by Don for ripping out analog systems and putting in digital systems, which is an all-day process. So we couldn't take a Friday. The Alexander fire started. I literally came out from my office to go to lunch and saw it in the distance, said, "Oh no, that's bad." Told my boss I was going home to evacuate my pet and some belongings. And I had a little HT, a GMRS 5-watt HT in the car. People just started using the system. It kept neighbors informed. At this particular time, I was sure we would have no reach into Loveland whatsoever, so I didn't bother hosting a Thursday night net. So they did it without me. Hams, we passed traffic to 275. There were lots of traffic going on. If you want, you can scan the QR code and get to how to get to a GMRS license in 4 steps, or you can Google the phrase, how to get a GMRS license in 4 steps. You've got an FRN, you've already done it. Yes, sir.
I had one point, and I have a question to follow behind that.
Yes, sir.
Concerning the Alexander fire, and I was involved with it, and so was Joe. Not only did you have to worry about the Alexander fire on your to the north, but you had a pretty good fire kicking off from Boulder County
That's
that was
correct.
coming up to your backside.
That's right. And taking out one of our escape routes that goes
Correct.
over private land.
Correct.
Yeah, I have a former colleague and friend who lives in Lyons. They saved his house. They saved none of his vegetation.
Right.
So
But it was very interesting. And by the way, I reached out to you early on because of my working with the Red Cross, and you humbly allowed me to use your repeater if I needed to get on there. And I said I would, if I did, it would just be when I'm in your area for a specific reason, supporting your area.
yeah, our repeater is semi-restricted. We don't publish the tones. I went with tones for a couple reasons. I didn't do split tones because not every radio does do split tones. I didn't use DCS because everybody numbers their DCS codes differently. So if you look in the Midland book, DCS setting 3 is different from what you find in a Woxon or Ocean, as it's supposed to be pronounced.
Yep.
DCS 3. All the Chinese radios are the same basic structure, a single chip receiver, direct conversion, plus a transmitter, and a small microprocessor to control it all. The radio does manage the band plans for you. So you're sitting there in high power, and then you go over to channel 14 and you're on low power. What was that about? Well, that's your radio saying, I'm going to narrow band and low power, because that's what the GMRS band plan says. GMRS in Wikipedia is very thorough, so you can see the entire band plan laid out. We're on channel 15 for hams. That's 462.550 megahertz. So if you want to listen, that's fine. We've gotten contact, again, off the back of our Yagi in Thornton by people who also do emergency work and said they would pass messages on as well. Basically, the rules are the repeater is registered in my GMRS, and it says request permission for access. And I've gotten a lot of Lovelanders who've asked just for general use, and I've said no. I've also got a lot of people who say, oh, I live here, and I want to use it for emergency services. And to those people, because they live in our location, I say yes. Or they say, I'm an emergency services worker. I say yes. Or an Aries member who wants to participate. That's also the magic word. Yes, sir.
Can you, which you haven't really delved into, but can you explain to everybody how the license permits all the family members?
All family members use the same call sign. They can all distinguish between each other by saying Unit 1 or whatever. They don't have to. GMRS is pretty loose on that. So now, going back, Pete got himself a GMRS call sign. Angie could have used that, but she wanted her own call sign. So she got her own call sign. Because they're both family call signs, it is perfectly legal for each of them to use the others. Something you can't do as a ham, of course.
Eric, I had a question here.
Yes, sir.
I kind of want to clarify some things. After I was involved, of course, as the Alexander Fire with you and Aries, is if you didn't know this, I'm the regional guy for this, which means I've got people down south and up here. I've got I've got 11 different counties in Colorado that I manage for Aries. And when Pete and I talked over the picnic, I said, I got to get a GMRS license because bottom line is I got to listen to these guys. I've got to relay what I know to these guys as much as I can. A lot of times when we work with the EOC, they don't want you to let everything know, as you well know. but I can manage licenses back and forth. I do join their Thursday night net. My name isn't up there, but I know.
You're not in my neighborhood.
I'm not in your neighborhood. That's true. But really, if it's good to get a radio that does this and listen to these guys. They're very low key, but they're very, very. The way they run a net. By the way, thanks for using my script, which I wrote like 10 years ago. These guys are really professional. Everybody that runs that thing is really, really good. In fact, they do better than I do. But it's just, if they're going to have a problem, they're going to get on that repeater, and I'm going to listen. And then anything that I can give them, I'm going to give them that. And, of course, I can also broadcast what's going on down south. And I hear a lot of people from my guys down south say the same thing. Hey, there's some guys out here that's got private things that's going on GMRS. I said, why don't you get a flipping radio and talk to them? Because they've got a reason they're doing it the same way that you guys have got. So I think this is so cool that you guys have got this. And I applaud you for doing it.
And like I said, our neighborhood, these guys don't want to play radio all the time. Yes, sir.
I was going to say, during the Alexander Fire, the GMRS community, and not particularly your net or your frequency that you're using, but the larger net that's up in this area, those guys voluntarily got together and started supporting the community and passing information along. It was really, it became organic and really helpful.
Now, just a little Aries background for me. I'm a member of Bee Cares. I'm actually on the board. I was at one point a member of Larimer County as well, back when it was called District 10. But I kind of let that lapse. In 2013, I was the only contact for Larimer County in my area. So I had a 2-meter radio, single band, in the house. So they were working crossband, and I was on the 115. So they'd put out a call on 70 centimeters. I'd respond on 115, and they'd say, oh yeah, I forgot. How are things going up there? I said, nothing's happening. We're bored. We're all just taking up space. You want to run up food? We'll love it. Yes, sir. Make sure you're on. You're very trying, but yes.
Is there any chatter on your repeater? Do people just, hi, how are you? What are you doing? Oh, I planted a garden on my car stick. Or is it, reserved for emergency stuff?
Light chatter does go on more now that people are getting comfortable. Ideally, I'd like some of our retirees to be as comfortable with GMRS as they are with a cell phone. And we had an unfortunate incident last week or the week before where somebody had an allergic reaction and passed away. And our first knowledge of it was the ambulances, emergency vehicles, and cops running, screaming up the neighborhood. And GMRS came alive. Anybody know what's going on? Does anybody hearing anything? Somebody relayed that they heard on a website that monitored the local police what was going on. And so the neighborhood relaxed. No, nobody started a house fire. Yes, it's very unfortunate there was this accident. But the chatter is getting there. I've asked more than once for help on things like getting my solar panels mounted right. And my HF folded dipole is down. So Bart pointed me to a particular type of cable that is supposed to be very resistant to fraying. Bart has the splice kits for that cable. And I'm probably going to want Pete because when I go fire my easy hang up to get over the trees, it usually goes up, over, above the tree, caught in the wind, blows back, and comes down behind me. If I shoot on the other side of the tree, what happens is it hits the tree there and drops through all the branches, and then you have to trim the branches away. This is not my first rodeo. But anyway, so that's going to be happening hopefully within the next week. But at one point during the 2013 flood, they said, "Can you work in the EOC?" I said, "I've got no ID to go into the EOC that they'll accept." I said, "I've got a Boulder County Sheriff's ID card." And it's like, "They won't take that, yeah." And I didn't know the radio's there, of course. So. What's that?
I was just asking the equipment at the OC if they might be.
It was asked if Larimer County and or Well County have asked to go to GMRS radios in there. Not that I'm aware of.
We've talked to Cynthia about getting a license, though.
Who's Cynthia?
I'm sorry? Camille, I'm sorry.
Oh, Camille. I know who Camille is. Oh, okay, that's part of the, okay, I know what you're talking about now. That's that group that they're trying to.
Forgive me, I'm terrible with names, Jim.
Jim?
Yeah, exactly.
What the hell? It's right on here. Okay.
We'll get one right.
I do think that the communities are going to this. In fact, we've been talking to Red Feather with our repeater, and I think that small communities like that, it's hard for me to go up there and say, "Hey, you all need a license," unless I say it's only $35 and you don't have to go through a test. But if I say you need a license and I'll be able to. I'll send you through a course and you'll get the license, but there is a 35-question test. Yeah, they say, I don't think so. But
now, we did get one of those with BCARES set up, but it's the exception to the rule. The Mountain Emergency Resource Net, MERN, up around Gold Hill in Boulder County, is technicians. They basically took all the analog Motorola radios from the police and sheriff, that were reprogrammed to work with their repeater. That repeater, by the way, is a vacuum tube repeater.
Yeah, that's Alan. Yeah, I know what he was trying to do down there. But yeah, I mean, we will do this any place. If somebody needs a class or something, I will do that. But there's a lot of people that I remember, and I can't think of the lady's name that was before Camille. We set up a deal. Everybody at Red Feather was coming down all over and this and that. We had all our instructors down there, and no one showed up for the class. No one, except the instructors. So we had great coffee that day.
Are you still planning on putting GMRS in the Red Feather repeater?
Are we planning on putting a GMR? No, we're not. We don't have the power. We're planning on putting a DMR and a analog of some sort. I don't know if it's VHF or UHF. I don't recall.
Now, just for thoughts, my requirements for the repeater I bought from Don was that it was either type accepted or grandfathered, spectrally pure, and could handle 100% duty cycle. To get those Kenwoods to handle 100% duty cycle, they have to run at 20 watts. So Bart in Evans is hitting the backside of that repeater antenna that's set at 20 watts, full quieting in, full quieting out. So power may not be your problem.
What I'm talking about is I'm running nothing but solar up there. I'm talking about battery power
Yeah,
to
well,
run these things.
the Kenwood can run on 12 volts, at least the ones Don had.
I know, but what I was saying is we've got 2 repeaters we're putting up there only with solar power.
Yeah.
So
I was wondering, and I could be, speaking out of turn, in the future that maybe we could use that same site to put a GMRS if we come up with a solar power plan with it as well.
This site used to be exclusively solar powered. They went to mains power only when one of the school districts required high-speed microwave, these 2 antennas here, 24/7 with no chance of downtime whatsoever. And these are digital microwave links. Inside the building, there's a VoIP telephone connected to their system, and it's for one of the school districts. So it's at that point that they switched to mains power. And the people who own the land that this repeater hut is on, the individual who had leased it to Collins Communications passed away. His relatives were not so happy with the repeater hut there. We don't have to worry about the legal issues. That's his problem. So, now, yes, sir.
I just wanted to mention that there are several other repeaters along the Front Range that are open to anybody with a license. If you go to frontrangegmrs.org, and if you are licensed, you can register, and they'll give you the tones to those repeaters. And so there's some great systems already put in place that, I've hit several of them, and they work great, and they go all up and down the Front Range, the metro area. So just be aware there's other options besides this one available.
Yeah,
And they're just really friendly people, really helpful.
There are 3 separate repeaters that I know of on channel 15. Now, I talked to one of the folks from Front Range Repeaters. He's the guy in Thornton I spoke to on our repeater, and I said, I want to be a good neighbor with these guys. And he said, well, not everybody on your channel wants to be a good neighbor back, so be aware of that. But yeah, the closest thing to problematic behavior I've ever seen on any of the channels was not on ours, but basically was a bunch of hams who'd set up their own private GMRS repeaters so that they could talk politics. So, um, uh, but anyway, yeah, we basically, and I gave when I ran up to get evacuated from the Alexander Mountain fire, Greg followed me. He did not have a GMRS license. I gave him a frequency. It was the wrong frequency, as it turns out. And Greg brought an empty SUV and almost everything we needed. The one thing we didn't have was a spare driver, because somebody wanted to haul their other car down the hill.
Yeah, listen to that whole conversation that day.
Okay. Yes, sir. Microphone, please.
I will let Pete go first.
Oh, come on, live a little, throw it. Some ham radios will let you allow it. The Chinese brands will generally allow it. Technically, no. Now, technically, most people don't care. The FCC hasn't cracked down on anybody for transmitting wideband deviation on an FRS frequency, for example. The Japanese brand Alinco DMR radios are Part 90 certified. They will do GMRS. And in the programming software, each channel you can set the deviation separately.
I was going to touch on almost exactly that subject. Like Eric said, I went up there with just the Kenwood D710 in my vehicle. I do not have a GMRS license yet. So I was able to listen to what was going on the GMRS traffic up there, but not transmit. GMRS radios have to be Part 95 certified by
yes.
rule legally, and a lot of our stuff is not. However, in an emergency, and that day certainly qualified, you can transmit anywhere to anyone if you need to for the immediate protection of life or property when no other means are available. I have my thoughts on Baofangs. I was talking to Doug on the way in this morning. They're crappy radios, and you want to spend $30 or less for a radio you want to maybe depend your life on. After, and as a direct result of the Pinewood fire, I've bought a couple wash-on mobile radios that Ocean.
Yeah.
I bought a couple of
So-called.
the IP67 rated little 20-watt mobile radios that will transmit all over the place.
Yeah.
But only one frequency at a time. And I've bought now two what I called not so cheap Chinese radios that are handhelds. An Ocean 935H, which is a ham version of the 935G, which was GMRS.
Yes.
It basically transmits 136 to 174 and 400 to 480 or more. So it can be programmed to the GMRS channels. And another company called VGC, VCG, Vero Communications Group, out of China, has their N76, which is dual band, but transmits in those same, 136, 174, 400 to 480 plus, with APRS and GPS built in. IP67. Those radios, unlike the Baofangs, one of them was $149, one of them was $180. So they're not so cheap. Very clean spectrally. I looked at them both, with both the stock antennas and with Nagoya antennas. Very clean spectrum. They put out full rated power as advertised, and they will work out of band, including the GMRS channels. So I now have the frequencies written down. Even though I don't have the license yet, I'll probably get one. I have the frequencies written down, and I have radios that will work there. Last October, somebody got stuck up in the White Mountains after a long hike and ended up on the wrong side of a ridge and got dehydrated and sick and couldn't keep fluids down and was in deep fallen timber and was able to get out on the 275, and I was able to work with Larimer County Dispatch, and this gentleman here, Paul, stopped by as well to let me listen to the Larimer County side of traffic. But the radio, that the HT that person had was just a strict locked down dual band ham. It wouldn't go outside the ham bands. Search and rescue, which has frequencies in the 156 area, 150 something ish area, they wanted to be able to talk to him directly, and they couldn't because he didn't have a radio. So now when I go out, I have a radio that can, if need be, talk directly to search and rescue, talk directly to Rocky Mountain National Park, and their rangers and other folks like that, if need be.
Yeah, I would definitely make sure that the authorities using those frequencies give explicit approval before going. That the California ham who got fined for talking on the Forest Service frequencies is an example of how not to do it.
Yeah, exactly. The $34,000 fine. Yeah, they were actually asking. I was on the phone with dispatch as I was on the radio with that individual, and they were asking me, where can this guy transmit? Because we want to talk to him directly if we can. And they didn't have a radio that would do ham frequencies, but they could do VHF on their portion of the band, simplex. So I go out a fair amount in the backcountry, and now I make sure I have the ability, given the right permissions and circumstances, to talk to them on their frequencies, simplex if need be.
The Alinco DMRs are Part 90 certified, and so the two frequencies that are programmed into it are one analog, one digital VHF low. But they will, of course, they're sold at HRO. They will do analog or digital in the ham bands or in the GMRS bands. Now, the Alincos were designed for commercial installers. To that end, their programming design people were brain damaged, I swear. They are not easy to program. The software is basically your only hope, and you've got about 3 or 4 database tables to fill out before you can program in a single DMR channel. So that's how it's set up. So we have two GMRS radios up here. This one is Part 95, a Midland. It follows the letter of the law explicitly to that end. It has a non-removable antenna for a handheld. This is the Ocean radio. It has a removable antenna. It follows Part 95 to the Spirit, but You know, if they wanted to, they could probably crack down on it, but the FCC is kind of lazy about how they're doing it. Spectral purity, okay, go. Which is also why Alinco is selling their Part 90 certified radios in ham shops. So let me ask again what I asked the first time. How many are in areas or are weather spotted or have participated in an active rescue effort of individuals or people? Maybe you should think about GMRS. That's all I got.
This presentation was brought to you by the Northern Colorado Amateur Radio Club. For more information, visit our website, ncarc.net. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
It's riding